participated in various national and international competitions and came second as well. So welcome, Jonathan. I believe he's also a member now.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. I don't waste time.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Feeling very welcome to be able to be here today. Good afternoon. The first sentence Albert has said already, so I'll skip that. I would like to thank Professor Albert Harold and the Institute for inviting me to give a talk here with you today. My talk will be more or less 30 minutes. And okay, before beginning with my presentation, I would like to share with you some of my experiences. At the end of 1985, I was fortunate to receive a bursary from the Italian government to study architecture in Italy in 1986. This bursary is open to qualified architects and forms part of an international cultural exchange between South Africa and Italy, where bursaries are given in the field of the arts to Italian candidates to study in South Africa and vice versa. In 1986, I enrolled at UAV, the University Institute of Architecture in Venice, and followed a 2-semester course in architectural composition. Here it's called studio work, with visiting Professor Peter Eisenman. In 1987, I received a bursary for 1 year from the architect Daniel Liebeskind to participate in his private school of architecture called Architecture Intermunion in Milan, Italy. During this period, I participated in the winning competition for the Jewish Museum in Berlin. In 1998, I met Professor Armando Fabro, who teaches at the School of Architecture in Venice. He asked me to restore some of his architectural models and help him to build the frames for his upcoming exhibition of abstract paintings. We got on well, and he asked me to join him in his small architectural studio in Venice and to participate in a competition as an assistant in his course of architectural composition for first-year students at Venice. I won the competition and began teaching with him in 1999. This teaching and working relationship will last for 8 years until I left him to continue to teach and work in the studio of Professor Renato Rizzi for the last 6 years before returning to South Africa. I have participated in various international and national Italian competitions, received an honorable mention for a competition with Professor Armando Fabro in Krakow, Poland, which you will see soon, and a second prize with Dr. Architect Magda Menguzzi in a national competition in Ferrara, Italy. In South Africa, I have rehearsed a nursery school for 60 children, 8 single-family houses, and have had 5-person exhibitions on 4 different work in Italy. Today, I would like to present to you the first of my work on the theme of the low relief, the competition for Cracovia, that I had on exhibition and not my architectural projects, even if my so-called artwork has a strong architectural foundation, because after all, I'm an architect. The title of my work, Variations, the preliminary studies, the drawings and low reliefs, refers to the work process of repeated trials and errors, experiments, improvisations and adjustments, typical of the act of composing and making, whether it's music, writing, painting, sculpture, architecture, etc. In 1996, Professor Armando Fabro, I will refer to him from now on as Armando, won an international competition for a new square for Krakowia's Rejnik in Poland. Due to this success, he was invited to participate in a closed invited competition in the year 2000, organized by the 8th International Biennale of Architecture in Krakow, Poland. In its creative dimension, the Biennale is the most important architectural event in Poland. The title of this competition was Beauty, Ethics and Ecology, with the subtitle, The Open Spaces in the City of the New Millennium. Armando asked me to participate with him in this 5-week competition, and we were joined in the last 2 weeks by a thesis student of Armando and an exchange Chinese architectural student. This idea competition asked for the creation of new architectural visions on a place in a city that requires improvement, and which can act as a forum for the exchange of opinions on contemporary architecture, facing the difficult challenges of the present and the future. The competition site was the Krakow Common, called Blonia, which the competition brief described as a magic place, a large green wedge flanked by the Rudaba River, and which is as special to Krakow as the fields of Mars to Paris, Hyde Park to London, or Central Park to New York. You can see this triangle in the middle of this image. This is a 15th century image of the walled city of Krakow, in which can be noticed the large rock outcrop called the Wawel, on which the castle is situated. Another 17th century image of the city of Krakow common, the Blonau, in which the unique Krakow skyline can be seen. Again, here is evident the rock outcrop, the Wawel, on which the castle is situated. In the foreground is the competition site. A 15th century image of the walled city. We will return later to this image in a photographic image which indicates the moat transformed into a green park. Indicated in A is the Wawel with a castle, which houses a very famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci. This painting by Leonardo became to us an important reference for our project. This beautiful woman resembled for us the city of Krakow, and the animal, the common, that the city holds. In our project, the woman became the common, and the animal, our project, which the common holds. Two images of the common, the Blonau, which was part of the competition material. The first top 18th century image shows the common seen from the low hill, the St. Bronislava hill in the foreground, situated at the back of the common. The second image of the 19th century indicates the common and the citizens at rest. In the background is a mound, a reminder of the low hill that we see in the first image. During the period of the Free City of Krakow, 1815 to 1846, the landscape of the common was enriched by a predominating point. The Kuskoska Mound started in 1820 on the St. Bronislava hill as an earth structure built from the soil brought in handfuls by the people. A monumental earthwork was thus created, fulfilling ever since the role of a symbolic reference to the brave of the national hero. We decided on a work program. The first week will be dedicated to research. We set off on a feverish week, reading all we could lay hands on regarding this ancient city. We read up on mythologies, fables, studied the historical development of the city, read up on its architecture and Polish artists, etc. We got together daily, sharing our discoveries, and planned new directions indicated by the material we have discovered. What was evident was that the ancient history of the city was transmitted by generation in his mythologies and fables. There exist two variations regarding the name of this ancient city. The first refers to the similarity of the name Krakow with the word Krakak, and the sound of this word that corresponds to the word Kruk, which means raven, a bird most frequent in the territory. It is told that in pagan history this bird, with its long black feathers, was regarded with great adoration and became in time a protective divinity. In Sanskrit, chakram signifies the circle, the cycle, according to Indian mythology. In the beginning of time, the god Sivya let 7 stones fall on the earth that contained the cosmic energy. According to this mythology, the chakram renovates the vital forces protecting the world from the bad due to the protecting circle. It was believed that one of the 7 chakram fell on the Wawel, and today can be found on the foundations of the castle. The others fell on New Delhi, Jerusalem, Mecca, Delphi, Rome, and Velahadra. Krakow is therefore one of the sacred places in the Hindu tradition. The magic number 7 is composed by the numbers 4 plus 3, which equals 7, which is the union of the human with the divine, and therefore refers to its perfection. 7 is the number of the musical scale, the days of the week, the wonders of the world, the colors of the rainbow, the 7 arts, and in the Kabbalah, it corresponds to the letter Zayin, which represents the spirit and fight for what you believe in. It is letter Z in our alphabet. This magic number will reappear in our project. The second variation about the name of Krakowa talks about the big rock outcrop, the Wawel, on which were constructed the castle by the king Krak, from which in the second version originates the name Krakow. I found during this research week a constellation of stars called Kruk, which reappears in our project. The Wawel, the last rock outcrop which dominates the city, is a rock full of profound cuts and deep caves. In one of these caves, legend has it, lived a big dragon, who lived on making disappear cows, goats, and even citizens. The legend narrates that the dragon referred young citizens, and especially young maidens. The narration continues that one day a courageous young man decided to investigate and found himself not far from the mouth of the cave, with the spectacle of an enormous dragon bathing in the sunlight. Its whole body was covered in lucid scales of yellow and green. On its back, pointed scales. Its legs were like tree trunks. Terrified and paralyzed by this sight, looking straight in the eyes of this beast, the young man ran away as fast as he could after the dragon yawned, exposing a terrific set of teeth accompanied by fire and smoke. The notice of his experience traveled fast in the city, and he was called to a meeting of the city councillors, where it was discussed how this monster arrived in the city. One proposition was that the monster arrived with a river. To this explanation we will return later in an offering to the river and in a second reading. All the councillors decided that it should be killed as soon as possible. 3 knights tried subsequently, on orders of the king, but had to run for their lives. The king offered that who succeeded in this mission will be awarded generously, taking his daughter, the princess, as a wife, and half of his possessions and reign. Many princes and knights arrived to take up this offer, only in a part to lose their lives. In the end, the king decided to confront the dragon in person. He ordered all his cavalry to prepare themselves with the most resistant arms and select the longest and most sharp sword in his possession to confront the dragon. The preparations to this duel was interrupted by a calm young man with blonde hair, called Scoop, who insisted stubbornly to speak to the king. He told the king that although he was a simple shoemaker, he knows the method to kill the dragon, and that he would very much like to marry the princess. He asked the king that he only has one request, and that is that the king gives him the biggest goat in his possession, and a large quantity of sulphur and sheep fat. The king, desperate with the situation, granted him his request. The young man killed the poor animal, took out his intestines, and stuffed it with a mixture of sulphur, and stitched everything close again. When the dragon was sleeping, he placed a stuffed goat close to the entrance of the cave and smeared the sheep fat all over the animal. The next morning, when the sun began to warm the earth, the citizens of Krakow was awakened from their dreams by an enormous loud bang. It was the dragon that had eaten the stuffed goat. With his throat burning from the sulphur, drank a large quantity of water and exploded in thousands of pieces. In this way, the city of Krakow was finally freed from his dragon. The king kept his promise, and on the wedding day, the young couple offered the sacrifice of precious jewels to the river. The river accepted this gift, and from that day on, no monster ever disturbed the tranquility of the city. This narrative is one reading transmitted through time by the way of fables, and which is still alive in the culture of the city. The cave where the dragon lived, called Smotsa Yama, Cave of the Dragon, can still be visited today in calm, and without being afraid. The Dragon of the Wawel is the most loved and adored mascot of Krakow, and many tourists on their visits to the city take one home. The dragon is a mythological figure found in the culture of memory in many European cities. The city of Krakow was subjected in its history to many floods of the Rudaba River. This uncontrollable natural disaster, of which many European cities fell prone, for example also Ferrara in Italy, which has the dragon embedded in its history. In a second reading, it is possible to see the mythological dragon as a figure representing the natural phenomena of flooding. The maiden representing the city, fragile with regard to the power of nature, which manifests itself unexpectedly with disastrous consequences, and the knight representing the citizens who protect the city and construct ingenious engineering projects to fight against disasters. We discovered, reading the mythology and history of Krakow, that an ancient king searched for the formula of making gold, saw the city of Krakow transformed into Europe's biggest alchemist laboratory. Alchemists all over Europe, paid by the king, worked day and night, experimenting to find out this magic formula. This fact also became an inspiration for our project. The Blonia, the Krakow Common, is a recognized municipality meadow, park and area, which has never been disturbed with building. Framed by wide boulevards and from which a unique Krakow skyline can be seen, it is used for walks, open-air events, creation, fun fairs, outdoor markets, circus performances, sport, music festivals, large political and religious manifestations, such as masses on the occasion of the Holy Father's visit, and even in the past for military parades. This organized urban complex of the city's open greenery is situated 500 meters from Conco's Market Square, which is the very center of the city. The competition brief demanded, and I quote, "Does it mean that the place in the center of the city can still be reserved for public meetings? That the city can afford it? That there are still occasions for thousands of inhabitants, citizens to manifest together, expressing their happiness, anger, or convictions? That people still want to see and listen to each other? That the real physical contact has not been defeated by the virtual one yet? That light and space still count, while greatness is the prime value of space? That the reserve of unprofitable areas is profitable? That wind and auction are profitable for the inhabitants of the city? That there are limits to land speculation?" I unquote. It asks for taking into consideration the protection of this cultural heritage and arranging the green areas as public spaces of high aesthetic, natural, functional and landscape values. I quote from the text that accompanied our competition entry. "Magic Conco constantly evoke figures, places and myths that make her magic. We know that the treasures of the city consist in the stones, transfigured in the memory of the people who once lived there. Precious stones set in a golden city, telling its story, reminding us of its origin and meaning. They give expression to the city. Today reality is more and more inexpressive. The city is not identifying itself anymore with the places that created it. It has lost its authenticity. The Blonia is a meaningful figure of Krakow, a necessary empty space which feeds the city's expressive image of a green wedge-shaped empty space, drawn by a fragile but uncancelable carpet made of pathways traced by residents who live there. The Blonia has to be protected as a relic of the past. The Blonia is an urban cavity, the matrix for the negative of the constructed surrounding and its origin. The project keeps intact the image of the Blonia, like a garden city, drawing meaningful figures, evocative pieces of architecture, theatres of reality on its edges. 7 urban rooms that represent traces of the city, reality scenes transfigured in the urban and common imaginary, ephemeral architectural tableau vivant, which evoke images and monstrous events of history. These magic boxes, the Corbusier called them boîtes à miracle, excavations, Epigean gardens, labyrinths, and opaque forests of columns, Leonardo's theatres, urban rooms that communicate meaningful figures of the language of reality. I unquote. At the bottom right of the image can be seen part of the moat of the castle, transformed into a green ring, which constitutes the natural protection of the environment as well as the landscape background for preserving the historical urban forms. An image of the Blonia in the competition site. Sorry, I'm taking water. At the end of our first week of research, Amanda invited me to accompany him on the Saturday afternoon to an exhibition of Jacopo de Barbari at the Corre Museum on Piazza San Marco in Venice. The Venetian painter and engraver Jacopo de Barbari, 1415 to 1516, met Albrecht Dürer in Venice in 1495. The same year he was commissioned by the rich German merchant Anton Kolb to do a bird's eye view of Venice, which he published in 1500. The woodcut that we see here, of 1.3 meters by 2.8 meters, was composed of 6 panels, each 65 centimeters by 94 centimeters. On an exhibition were 5 different variations, every time with adjustments and corrections, composed each time of 6 panels in pear wood with prints of this immense work of art, until arriving at the final and 5th one. As this final print shows, this work of art is not an imaginary vision of Venice, but a very detailed and precise study of Venice of the 1500s. Until today, this is the only precise historical document that exists of the city of that time, and is used continually as a reference by those that are involved in the restoration project in the city today. I was completely overwhelmed by this exhibition, by the beauty of the work and the enormous fine detail and superb artistic craftsmanship. These big woodcuts, composed each of 6 panels and stained black by the ink during printing, left an enormous impression on me. The whole night afterwards I had these large woodcuts in my head and was convinced that this could be a way of presenting our project. The competition asked for 2 drawings of 1 meter by 70 centimeters. The Sunday morning early I called Armando and asked if we could have coffee together. I proposed to Armando that we buy 2 panels in wood and engrave and cut our project into the surface. I proposed that we put these 2 panels together horizontally as one piece of work and not separate them, and that we stand them dark like the Barbary woodcuts. I explained that when I participated with Libeskind in the Jewish Museum competition in Berlin, he taught us a technique that we used on the models to make them dark. Armando said, okay, but you have 5 days to do a mock-up and to convince me. On Saturdays and Sundays, the Indonesians, like I think also in South Africa, do work in and on their houses. After my meeting with Armando on my way home, walking past a group of garbage boxes, I saw 16 wood offcuts, 25 by 25 by 3 centimeters thick on the pavement. Obviously someone had been fixing new shelving in the house and the shelves were a bit too long. After 2 trips I had all the offcuts home. I decided that I will only use material as far as possible that had been thrown away and recycle them in the work that I would like to propose. Armando's surname is Del Fabro. Fabro means metal worker. His father was a Fabro, his grandfather was a Fabro, and so his great-grandfather. He comes from a family of metal workers, which explained their surname. This I found fascinating. I decided I will use as far as possible offcuts and primary materials: iron, copper, brass, steel, wood, and stone. The Monday I visited 2 metal workers in the city and collected offcuts from their trash cans, and had 6 of the wood shelf offcuts found on the pavement, trimmed down to 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters. I invented the first rough drawing and built the first mock-up that we see here. This was followed by another 2 more refined drawings. And a final mock-up. The materials used are iron, copper, brass, cardboard, and the wood shelf offcut, which is the base of this low relief. The crystal is the salt crystal, of which Armando had a few pieces, which he brought back with him after he visited the biggest underground salt mine in Europe, near Krakow. These last 2 drawings and final mock-up I exhibited on my first personal exhibition in Italy. Armando was convinced by my mock-up, and that Saturday I went to buy the 2 wooden panels of 1 meter by 70 centimeters. 2 weeks had passed and we had 3 weeks left. We studied the Polish avant-garde painters and selected 3 works from the artist Henry Stasiewski, found a member of the group Unisti and introduced them in our project. Armando began composing the 2 joint wooden tables, and we discussed the low reliefs of our product to be done. As we can see from this drawing, there were in the early phase 8 urban rooms proposed, which we reduced to return to the magic number 7. I began to do 4 preliminary studies of the urban rooms. All the pieces, visiting every day the metal workers' workshops, I made double so that we could use them in the final 2 joint tables. The first urban room refers to crystals, which are an old theme in architecture. The first image is a fragment from one of the tables of Jacopo de Barbri's woodcut, an image of salt crystals, and a drawing of the shuttling for casting the crystals. Originally the crystals were foreseen to be in stone, but due to the shortage of time, I casted them in resin, which I covered. A drawing of the crystals in the first composition, the fragment of the Barbary, and the final drawing. The study, low relief, with the base of the recycled shaft offcut, the salt crystal, and the resin crystals. These crystals were exhibition spaces in our project that lit up at night as large colored lanterns. The dragon. We called it the tongue of fire. 2 sketches by Armando and my reworking of them into a drawing for realizing the low relief. An image of the low relief. This urban room with its colourful wall edge was envisaged as a sculpture garden and is like a labyrinth. The labyrinth is an old theme in the realization of gardens in Europe. The third study was for the sunken garden, for which we referred to a painting of the Polish artist Struwig. My drawings for preparing to make this study low relief: a drawing of the constellation of the stars called Crook, a first composition, and a drawing of the painting which superimposed the constellation Crook. Some more drawings towards finding the final composition, a drawing of the different materials used, and the final drawing. An image of the low relief. This sunken garden was reached by 2 ramps, and the constellation was a series of tall towers from which to view the Bologna, the large green wedge, and the garden of hedges, which changed colour according to the season, another kind of labyrinth. The last study refers to another work by the artist Struwig, the Endless Museum by Le Corbusier and the Ziggurat. Some of my drawings to make the work: a preliminary drawing, the materials to be used, a construction drawing, and the final drawing. An image of the low relief. This urban room was seen as a kind of theatre for performances, installation, music performances, fashion shows, etc. A boîte à miracles, a miracle box or room. My drawing regarding the composition of the 2 final panels that were together. 3 weeks passed, and we now had 2 weeks left. At this stage, we were joined by Ramanda's thesis student and the Chinese exchange student. We began chiseling feverishly, cutting and gluing the pieces of the city and preparing everything for the painting of the 2 tables, and mounting the last week all the pieces of the urban rooms using the 4 relief studies as a reference. The final drawings and the 4 low relief studies were exhibited on my first exhibition. An image of the final work of our competition entry, 2 meters by 70 centimeters. Even if we did not win this competition, one of the jury asked if she could have our competition entry to put up behind her desk in her office. We granted her this request because the work was made for Cacao, and it had the possibility to remain in the city and tell its story. Low reliefs, to be a low relief, work on a surface dimension in height, which varies from 1 mm to maximum 10 mm. Sometimes, on rare occasions, some elements may arrive at 3 cm. As you have realized, I have not been interested just to show you my work, but also interested to show you the process that is behind to arrive at the work. As in all work, there is a strong relationship between the head and the hand. An image of the diploma for honorable mention we received for our competition entry. Thank you very much for your patience.